Hey everyone, we're here for another quick conversation for the long haul of leadership with Tod Bolsinger, and we're going to look at a quote from Adam McHugh. This is from episode 208, Letting Go in Leadership to Move Forward in Life. And here's what Adam said. He said, we talk about grief when you lose a loved one, when you lose something very specific. But there's a real grieving process, I think, that comes along with life transition, with career loss, with job loss, with identity loss. And I'll read that one more time. We talk about grief when you lose a loved one or when you lose something very specific, but there's a real grieving process, I think, that comes along with life transition, with career loss, with job loss, with identity loss. And let me just give a little context to this. Adam tells his story of basically leaving pastoral ministry, where he, just had a really just some experiences that made him not want to do that anymore. You can hear that whole story in episode 208. And transitioned from pastoral ministry to being a wine sommelier in the San Ynez Valley in California. And that's sort of his life now. And so we talked about his experience of having to let go of what was his identity as a pastor, as a ministry leader, and grieving that process. So, Tod, that's kind of the context for this statement, and maybe just help us understand the value of what Adam brings in terms of his experience for others who are experiencing those kinds of things.
Yeah, this is I love this quote, and I really respect Adam. So Beth and my wife and I spent a day with him out at one of the vineyards where he's a sommelier. I was interviewing him for a book I'm writing. And, you see him in this beautiful, iconic place where he's talking about wine, and it's pastoral, and it's great. And you'd think, what a great life. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, when he left pastoral ministry, what he left was being a hospice chaplain.
Right.
People were dying every day. And now he spends every day, every night people were dying. And now he spends every day out in a vineyard talking to people about wine and life and joy. Well, what could possibly be grief?
Right.
And then what he points out so wisely is letting go of anything that has been part of your identity is really, really hard. And what we realize is we're not prepared that grief is actually the process we go through of shedding an old part of our life to prepare for the new thing that God's giving us. And Adam talks about it so beautifully. His book, Blood from a Stone, was one of the best books I read last year about this. And it reminded me, I'll just tell you personally, it reminded me of what it was like to send my kids to college. I loved being a parent of them when they were teenagers and when they were kids. And when I remember when I would drop my kids off for college, I would think, this is perfect. It's what we want for them. We want them to go to college. They're great human beings. And I'm going to miss them so much. I was hugging my daughter and I was weeping and I was telling her, I'm proud of you and I love you and I'm excited about your future. And I was thrilled that Beth and I were going to have this new season without kids and we can do great things. But I was still grieving. Grief is how God prepares us for the new chapter of life. And if you don't grieve, then you don't get to fully enter into the new thing.
And Christians, I think, are not very good at grieving because we're supposed to be joyful always, right? So how do we? What do you think about that?
And what's so terrible is because we are the people of the resurrection. So how do you get to a resurrection? Through a death. So we think we're supposed to be the people who skip Good Friday and just go to Easter Sunday. And what we've missed is, the joy, the triumphal entry of Palm Sunday, Jesus is Lord, has a lot of grief the next week until you get to, and he has risen from the dead and he is Lord. And so we have forgotten our own story, that grief is part of that story.
And we talked about the in-between a couple of quick conversations ago, and this recalls that for me, and the value of that in between. And as you're saying, resurrection, you have to go through Saturday, right, when it's just nothing happening, and you're weeping, and the death has happened, and life has not yet happened, and you just got to grieve that. but there's hope, right?
Mm.
Now, I don't want to put
Well,
flowers and sunshine on it, but there is some
well,
hope there, right?
what's interesting, Marcus, is, I mean, so you mentioned Holy Saturday. So almost
Yeah.
very few Protestants I know pay any attention to Holy
Hmm.
Saturday. Like if we
Hmm.
ignore Good Friday, we really ignore Holy Saturday.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in our church, we used to say Holy Saturday is where the church lives every day. We live in the hope, which is just the promise. The hope, faith is the promise of the confidence in things not seen. Like we live in the
Yeah.
promise of hope,
Yeah.
but we don't have it. So it's not
Yeah.
putting flowers on. It's holding
Yeah.
on to the
Yeah.
promise in the in
Yeah.
between. That
Yeah.
genuine grief is able to say, "This is truly sad. I'm letting go of something. I'm not sure what's next, and now I have to move forward." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the quote one last time from Adam, episode 208. He said, we talk about grief when you lose a loved one or when you lose something very specific, but there's a real grieving process, I think, that comes along with life transition, with career loss, with job loss, with identity loss.